The desert sun had no mercy that morning. It beat down upon the weathered boards of Dry Creek's main street, turning the dust into shimmering waves of heat that danced like phantoms. Horses stamped their hooves at the hitching rails, tails swatting lazily at flies, while the air carried a dry, bitter smell of sweat, leather, and the iron tang of blood. A crowd had gathered outside the saloon, not for whiskey or cards, but for a spectacle the frontier seemed to accept as cruelly ordinary. An auction block, a rough, hewn platform of oak planks, stood crookedly in front of the saloon doors. Upon it, chained by rusted iron cuffs, were 3 women. Their dresses were torn, their faces hollowed by hunger, eyes vacant as though hope had been blotted from them long ago. But it was the 4th figure that drew every set of eyes. She was younger, too young. Her hair clung damp to her forehead, her skin pale, lips cracked. A stained cloth wrapped her body, but the fabric was soaked through, the deep red of blood seeping down her thighs. She trembled, barely able to stand, one hand clutching her abdomen as if holding herself together. The woman beside her whispered, trying to keep her upright, but the girl's knees buckled, and the auctioneer barked angrily. "She stays on her feet, or she ain't worth a damn cent," he snapped, yanking her upright by the arm. The townsfolk muttered among themselves. Some laughed crudely, others shook their heads in disgust. Out here on the edge of the law, compassion was scarcer than rain. Now then, the auctioneer, a stout man with a greasy mustache, stepped forward and raised his arms. "We've got ourselves a fresh lot today. These fine women are fit for housework, company, or whatever else a man of means might need. Let's start the bidding." Coins clinked, voices rose. The first 3 women went quickly, sold off to ranch hands and miners with leering smiles. Then came the last, the bleeding girl. The crowd grew quieter. She swayed, eyes glassy, lips murmuring something no one could hear. The auctioneer cleared his throat uneasily. "This one she ain't much to look at. Weak stock, near useless far as I can tell, but—" He forced a grin. "She's young. Young enough to work, young enough to, well, you get my meaning?" A ripple of laughter. The girl closed her eyes, whispering to herself, maybe a prayer, maybe begging for death. "We'll start me at $5. Silence. A man at the back spat into the dust. Another chuckled. 5. Hell, she won't live 2 nights. $3 then. Still nothing. The auctioneer's smile faltered. Sweat trickled down his brow. 2. From the edge of the crowd came a voice. Deep calm, carrying a quiet authority that cut through the murmur of the mob. 1. The people turned. A man stepped forward, tall and broad-shouldered, his hat pulled low to shade his face. His duster coat hung heavy with trailed dust, boots scarred from miles of hard riding. He carried himself with the weary confidence of someone who had walked through fire more than once and lived to tell of it. Whispers moved through the crowd. "That's him. Ethan Cole, rancher out by Red Rock Mesa." The auctioneer's eyes brightened with relief. "Well now, looks like we've got a buyer. Do I hear 2? No one answered. $1, then, Ethan Cole said again, his voice steady. He didn't look at the auctioneer, nor at the crowd. His gaze was fixed only on the girl on the block, broken, bloodied, trembling. "Sold." The hammer fell. The crowd groaned in disappointment. No entertainment left to be had here. A few men muttered that Cole was a fool for throwing away $1 on something half dead. Others smirked, saying maybe the rancher had stranger tastes than they thought. But Ethan ignored them all. He climbed the platform and lifted the girl easily into his arms. She gasped faintly, her head lolling against his chest. For the first time her eyes fluttered open, locking onto his. They were gray storm, cloud gray, filled with pain and confusion. "You're safe now," Ethan said quietly. Her lips parted, but no words came, only a dry rasp. The auctioneer called after him. "No returns, Cole." "You bought her fair and square. She's your problem now." Ethan didn't answer. He strode through the crowd, their stares heavy on his back, and carried her down the street toward his horse. The sheriff watched from the porch of his office. Sheriff Amos Raleigh was a hard man, his badge dulled by years of blood and dust. His eyes narrowed as he watched Cole disappear into the distance. He'd known Ethan for years, knew his reputation, his past, and he knew this. Ethan didn't do anything without reason. Raleigh chewed his tobacco thoughtfully and spat into the dirt. "Something about that girl," Something about the timing didn't sit right. Ethan laid the girl across the back of his horse, covering her with his coat. She mowed softly, her skin clammy beneath his touch. "What's your name?" he asked. She barely managed a whisper. "Clara." He nodded. "Hold on, Clara. Just hold on." He mounted and spurred the horse west, away from Dry Creek, away from the stairs and whispers. The desert stretched before him, miles of harsh sun, rattlesnakes, and outlaws. But it was safer than leaving her in that cursed town another minute. By the time they reached the edge of Red Rock Canyon, Clara was fading fast. Her breaths came shallow, her face pale as ash. Ethan stopped by a stream shaded with cottonwoods, lifted her down, and set to work. He tore strips of cloth, cleaned her wounds, gave her sips of cool water. His hands were steady, practiced, like a man who had done this before. When Clara stirred again, her eyes flicked toward him with weak suspicion. Why did you buy me?" she whispered. Ethan paused, looking at the stream instead of her. His jaw tightened. "Not to own you," he said finally. "Not to hurt you. You've had enough of that." He looked at her then, eyes dark with something unspoken. "I bought you to give you a chance. Something nobody else here would." She stared at him, lips trembling. For the first time, tears welled in her eyes. But the frontier had no patience for peace. The snap of a twig echoed through the canyon. Ethan's hand dropped to his revolver. From the rocks above, 3 riders appeared, gusty, grinning, guns slung low. "Outlaws." Well, their leader drawled. "What do we have here? Ain't this a cozy little scene?" Ethan rose slowly, keeping himself between Clara and the men. His voice was low, dangerous. "Keep riding." The outlaw laughed. "Now why would we do that, Cole? Heard you bought yourself something in town. Thought we might take a closer look." His eyes drifted toward Clara. Ethan's hand tightened on the revolver. The canyon went still, save for the buzz of cicadas. A showdown was coming. The canyon held its breath. Even the cicadas stilled, their hum swallowed by silence. The sun hovered cruelly above the rocks, turning sweat into rivers down Ethan Cole's brow. His revolver hung loose at his side, but his eyes, sharp steel gray, were locked on the men perched above. 3 riders, outlaws. Their grins were all teeth and cruelty, the kind of men who found entertainment in suffering. "Well now," their leader drawled, spitting tobacco over the edge of the rocks. He wore a black bandana knotted at his neck, his beard ragged, his eyes a little too eager. "Didn't expect to find old Ethan Cole playing nursemaid." The second man cackled, a high-pitched laugh that grated like metal on stone. "Look at her. Barely standin', yet he's ridin' like she's gold." The leader's eyes slid toward Clara, half conscious under the shade of the cottonwood, her pale face framed by damp strands of hair. His grin widened. "She's fresh. Rare find out here. Boys, I reckon we take her off Cole's hands." Ethan's jaw tightened. His voice cut through the air, low and steady as a rattlesnake's warning. "Touch her, and you'll be dead before your boots hit the dirt." For a heartbeat, silence. Then the leader chuckled. "Always the hero, Cole. I heard the stories. Man who turned his back on his own warband. Man who couldn't save his family when fire took his spread. Now you're wasting breath on a half-dead girl." The past struck like a blade twisting in his gut. Ethan's fingers twitched on the revolver's grip. The outlaw saw it, smirked. So the rumors are true." The second man shifted in his saddle, hand inching toward his holster. The third spat into the dust, muttering, "Quit jawing. Let's take what we came for." The canyon air grew thick. Shadows stretched long. It was the kind of stillness that only broke in one way: gunfire. Ethan moved first. His revolver cleared leather in a blur, faster than most eyes could follow. The crack split the air, echoing through the canyon walls. One outlaw pitched backward, a red hole blooming in his chest before he even knew he was dead. The second fired wild, his shot sparking off stone inches from Ethan's head. Ethan pivoted, fired again, and the man tumbled from his saddle, screaming until the ground cut him off with a sickening crunch. The leader ducked low, his horse scrambling back along the ridge. He returned fire, bullet tearing splinters from the cottonwood. Clara whimpered, covering her ears. Ethan dropped behind a rock, reloading with calm efficiency. The leader cursed, firing again and again until his gun clicked empty. Silence fell, broken only by the panicked snort of the outlaw's horse. Ethan rose, sight steady, revolver aimed. "Ride," Ethan said. His voice carried like the desert wind, cold and absolute. "Ride now, or you won't ride again." For a moment, the leader hesitated, sweat streaking the dust on his face. His gaze flicked to Clara, then back to Ethan's unyielding stare. He spat, yanked his reins, and galloped into the desert, dust rising in his wake. Ethan didn't lower the gun until the outlaw was a shadow on the horizon. Clara stirred weakly beneath the tree, her voice barely a whisper. You killed them." Ethan holstered his revolver, kneeling beside her. His face betrayed nothing, though his hands were gentle as he offered her water. "I saved you." Her eyes searched his. "Trembling? Why? Why me?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted across the canyon, where the bodies of the outlaws lay still, vultures already circling high above. "Finally," he said, "because once, someone should have saved mine, and didn't." Clara blinked, confused, but exhaustion pulled her back into silence. Ethan adjusted his coat around her and lifted her again, cradling her against his chest. The road ahead stretched long and merciless, but he knew one truth: he could not turn back. Not now. Not with her. The ride west was a slow agony. Clara drifted in and out of consciousness, fever burning her pale skin. Ethan stopped often, watering her lips, forcing broth down her throat when he could. He pushed his horse hard, but never hard enough to break it. The desert was no place for haste, it punished the reckless. As the days stretched, Ethan's thoughts wandered back to his past. Memories he had buried beneath work, whiskey, and silence. The fire, the screams, the helplessness of standing too far away, arriving too late, watching his wife and infant daughter swallowed by flame while neighbors held him back. The memory was a brand burned into his soul. He had left the war behind, left the blood and mud of soldiering, to build a life. And in a single night, it had all been ash. Since then, he had lived alone on his ranch, working the land with calloused hands, speaking to no one more than needed. The world had taken his family, and he had taken nothing from the world. Until Dry Creek. Until Clara. They reached the ranch on the 5th night. Red Rock Mesa loomed against the horizon, jagged cliffs painted crimson by the setting sun. Ethan's ranch sat in its shadow. A spread of worn fences, a low barn, and a cabin of weathered pine. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney, promising warmth. Ethan carried Clara inside, laying her on a narrow bed. He lit the lamp, its glow soft against her pale face, and set to work boiling water, grinding herbs, preparing poultices the way his late wife had once taught him. Through fevered nights, he sat by her side, changing cloths, whispering words he hadn't spoken in years. When Clara finally stirred awake, truly awake, she found him dozing in a chair, revolver at his hip, hat tilted over his eyes. She whispered, "Ethan." His eyes opened immediately. "You're safe." Her lips trembled. "Why do you keep saying that?" "Because it's true." Tears welled. "No one ever has, not once in my life." Ethan reached for her hand, calloused palm against trembling fingers. For the first time since the auction, she let herself believe. But the Wild West never let peace linger. Word of Dry Creek's auction had spread, carried by whispers and whiskey-soaked tongues. The outlaw who escaped had not vanished into dust. He had gathered others, men hungry for revenge and profit. And Ethan Cole's ranch, sitting lonely under the shadow of Red Rock Mesa, had just become a target,